Chapter 4204. Seeing that his secret skill was easily broken by Lu Ming, Fei Ye's face darkened. Let's see how many moves you can take. A cold voice came out of Fei Ye's mouth. Then his body rapidly swelled up. Then a giant tree appeared between heaven and earth. Fei Ye turned into a giant tree. It was extremely huge, more than 1,000,000 feet tall. The tree crown opened up and covered the sky. It was like the legendary world divine tree. This is the primordial divine body? Lu Ming was slightly stunned. It was Lu Ming's first time seeing a plant-type primordial divine body. However, it wasn't strange. Not all primordial divine spirits were flesh and blood. There were also plant-type primordial divine spirits, but they were very rare. Obviously, Fei Ye was either the descendant of a plant-type primordial divine spirit or the primordial divine body that he cultivated was a plant-type primordial divine spirit. The giant tree that Fei Ye turned into was filled with leaves. These leaves were also of various colors and shapes. Then the giant tree shook. Countless leaves on the crown flew up and turned into various attacks, attacking Lu Ming. There were at least tens of thousands of densely packed attacks, covering a large area of the void. The power of these attacks was extremely terrifying. This move is interesting, Lu Ming revealed a faint smile. Then, a ray of light emerged from his body and shrouded him. It was one of the 3,000 ancient secret skills, the Great Defense Skill. After Lu Ming used the Great Defense Skill, the attacks formed by the leaves had already landed on Lu Ming. Clang, clang, clang. These attacks landed on the Great Defense Skill and made the sound of metal clashing. Sparks flew and violent explosions were heard. However, none of the attacks could break through the Great Defense Skill's defense. They could only make the Great Defense Skill vibrate slightly. In the blink of an eye, at least tens of thousands of attacks landed on Lu Ming's body. However, it was useless. There was no effect at all. They couldn't break through the defense at all. Fei Ye's face was extremely ugly. How is this possible? How is this possible? Fei Ye roared in his heart. His face was red. He couldn't wait to unleash his God Emperor realm cultivation and attack. However, there were so many people watching. If he were to use his God Emperor realm cultivation base now, he would lose all his face. He wouldn't be able to survive in the primordial divine lake anymore. Therefore, he could only push his strength to the limit of the deity Emperor realm, infinitely close to the God Emperor realm. However, as long as they were in the divine Emperor realm, even if they were infinitely close to the great God Emperor realm, they were still divine emperors. The difference between them and the great God Emperor realm was too great to affect Lu Ming. Around them, the spectators also widened their eyes and stared fixedly. What a terrifying defense! Looks like the flying leaf can't break his defense at all. His strength is unfathomable. I wonder how strong he is. Indeed. The surrounding people discussed animatedly. They were once again shocked by Lu Ming's strength. Based on the strength of the Divine Emperor layer, this man can fight someone who is 6.5 levels higher than him. Lu Ming speculated in his heart. In the Divine Emperor realm, being able to fight someone who is 6.5 levels higher than him was already very terrifying. Among all the geniuses that Lu Ming had met, only Yi Yu from the heavenly human tribe was able to do so. However, Lu Ming speculated that if Fei Ye was in the Divine Emperor realm, he wouldn't have been able to fight someone who was 6.5 levels higher than him. After he had broken through to the God Emperor realm, he had used the God Emperor realm as his foundation to cultivate for a period of time. Whether it was the primitive divine body, origin secret skills, or divine power, he had made great progress. Then, he suppressed his strength to the Divine Emperor realm to be able to fight someone who was 6.5 levels higher than him. Otherwise, Lu Ming speculated that the other party would be able to fight someone who was 5.5 levels higher than him in the Divine Emperor realm. For example, if a Divine Master Realm cultivator had reached an astonishing level in all aspects, such as origin secret skills, divine power, etc. If a Divine Master Realm cultivator suppressed his cultivation to the Divine Emperor realm, it wouldn't be difficult for him to fight someone who was 9 levels higher than him. That was why Fei Ye was astonished. He couldn't believe it. Although he was an emperor god and had suppressed his cultivation to the 9th level of the divine emperor realm, he could fight someone who was 6.5 levels higher than him. However, he could not break through Lu Ming's defense. One could imagine how powerful Lu Ming was. He could fight someone who was 7 levels higher than him. Had such a monster appeared in the primordial divine lake? It seems like that's all you've got. Let's end this battle then. At this moment, Lu Ming spoke in a faint voice. Then, Lu Ming took a step forward and his body shot out like an arrow, piercing through the flying leaf. The moment he dashed out, Lu Ming threw a punch. This punch contained the great art of destruction, the great art of shattering, and a series of extremely destructive ancient secret skills. Wherever Lu Ming passed by, all the attacks of the flying leaves were defeated and all the leaves exploded. In the blink of an eye, Lu Ming appeared under Fei Ye's gigantic tree. His fist accurately hit the trunk of the tree. A terrifying fist energy moved towards the trunk of the tree. Oh no! Fei Ye's heart pounded violently. He could sense how terrifying Lu Ming's punch was. If he continued suppressing his strength, he would definitely be severely injured. At the critical moment, he could not be bothered to continue suppressing his cultivation level. Instead, he unleashed a powerful aura. The power of the God Thearch realm gushed out wildly, wanting to block Lu Ming's punch. Boom! There was an earth-shattering roar and Lu Ming's figure retreated rapidly. He was pushed back tens of thousands of meters before he stopped. However, Fei Ye's gigantic tree was also shaking violently. The gigantic trunk was also pushed back. A gigantic hole appeared in the middle of the trunk. The gigantic tree quickly shrank and turned back into Fei Ye. At that moment, Fei Ye's face was pale. There was blood on the corner of his mouth. Even though he had released the strength of a great god, he was still injured. Firstly, the strength of Lu Ming's punch was indeed shockingly powerful. Secondly, Fei Ye had released the strength of a great god on the spur of the moment. At that moment, he couldn't fully release his strength. Therefore, even though he managed to block Lu Ming's attack, he still suffered some injuries. You've lost. Lu Ming stood in the void and looked at Fei Ye indifferently. According to the agreement, Fei Ye had to suppress his cultivation to the divine emperor realm. Now that he had released the strength of a great god, it was equivalent to losing. Fei Ye's face was gloomy. Cold light flickered continuously as he stared at Lu Ming. He had indeed lost. He knew that he wasn't Lu Ming's opponent when they were at the same level. He couldn't wait to use his full strength to suppress Lu Ming. However, that would be even more embarrassing. Fei Ye snorted coldly. He walked to the side and stopped talking. Who else wants to come up and try? Lu Ming's gaze swept towards Song Zhan and the others. Song Zhan and the others looked gloomy. However, none of them came out to fight. They knew their own strength. After suppressing their cultivation to the divine emperor realm, they were at most on par with Fei Ye. They were definitely not Lu Ming's opponent. Chapter 4205. No one stepped forward to fight with Lu Ming. The surrounding spectators were also discussing animatedly. Is there no one in the primordial divine lake who can fight with him? It's difficult. There's almost no one who can surpass Fei Ye in a battle of the same level. This person's combat strength is really terrifying. Unless he's a pure primordial divine spirit, but how can there be a young primordial divine spirit in this era? Some people sighed. It was difficult to find someone who could match Lu Ming in a battle of the same level. No one else? Lu Ming whispered, a little disappointed. He originally wanted to look around to see if there were any opponents to fight with, but it seemed like he was going to be disappointed. Not necessarily. There's someone who can definitely defeat him. Have you forgotten about that monster? Suddenly, someone shouted. Everyone looked over and saw that it was Yuan Jin. At first, it was Yuan Jin who provoked Lu Ming, but now Lu Ming was in the limelight, slapping him in the face. This made him extremely unhappy, and he wanted someone to suppress Lu Ming. Hearing Yuan Jin's words, many people seemed to have thought of something, and their expressions changed. You mean that monster? Someone asked. That's right, that monster. Yuan Jin gritted his teeth and nodded. But that monster is extremely arrogant. He doesn't like ordinary people at all, and his temper is very strange. Who can invite him? That's right, and I heard that he travels in the primordial divine lake all year round. Even if you want to find him, you can't find him. Some people shook their heads. As far as I know, that monster hasn't been in the primordial divine lake during this period. He's in seclusion in his residence, Yuan Jin said. Even if he's in seclusion in his residence, who can invite him here? He doesn't give face to anyone except for the Divine Master Realm Masters. Someone said, I'll invite him. Yuan Jin gritted his teeth. In order to suppress Lu Ming, he was going to go all out. Kid, do you dare to wait here for a while? I'll find someone stronger to suppress you. Yuan Jin looked at Lu Ming and said, Someone stronger? Don't disappoint me again. Lu Ming said lightly. As soon as this was said, Fei Ye's expression turned even uglier. Lu Ming was implying that he had disappointed Lu Ming. Don't worry, that person's strength has exceeded your imagination, Yuan Jin said. Oh, in that case I'll wait here. After that, Lu Ming walked to Autumn Moon's side and started chatting and laughing with Autumn Moon. Brat, just you wait. Yuan Jin roared in his heart. He was extremely jealous. Then he turned around and left. Yuan Jin, I'll go with you. Yuan Zhan said and followed Yuan Xie. The huge city that Lu Ming and the others were in was to the east of the primordial divine lake. And the person Yuan Jin and the others wanted to invite was not in this city, but in the city north of the primordial divine lake. They flew quickly and soon arrived at the city in the north. Then they came to a small hill. On the small hill, there was a simple wooden house. It looked ordinary, but it was simple and elegant. As soon as they arrived, Yuan Jin and Yuan Zhan could not help but feel nervous. They looked at each other and saw the cold sweat on each other's face. It seemed that there was something in the wooden house that they were very afraid of. Yuan Jin, are you really going to alert that monster? In my opinion, let's just forget about it. Yuan Zhan said and was a little hesitant. Yuan Jin was also a little guilty. However, in order to suppress Lu Ming, he gritted his teeth and said, Invite him, we must invite him. That brat embarrassed me in public. I must teach him a lesson. Then, have you thought of a reason to ask? Yuan Zhan asked. Don't worry, that monster is arrogant, but he's also extremely battle-hungry. He loves to fight with top monsters. When he knows that there's a particularly powerful monster, he'll definitely make a move. Yuan Jin said. As they spoke, the two of them were not far from the wooden house. You two, I'll give you 3 breaths time to get lost. Otherwise, don't blame me for being rude. At that moment, a cold voice came from the wooden house. Hearing this figure, Yuan Jin and Yuan Zhan's bodies suddenly trembled as if they were startled. Yuan Jin swallowed his saliva and tried to steady himself. He said, There's a new peerless monster in the primordial godly lake. He's extremely strong. I want you to exchange pointers with him. I'm not interested. You can leave now. That voice rang out, directly refusing. Don't be in such a hurry to refuse. That person is really strong. He has the strength of the 9th godly emperor layer, but Fei Yi suppressed his cultivation to the 9th godly emperor layer and he defeated him in one strike, said Yuan Jin hastily. Oh. This time, the voice in the wooden house let out a soft, oh, as if it was more interested in the story. Fei Yi suppressed his cultivation to the 9th godly emperor layer and he defeated him in one strike? Interesting. After that, the door of the wooden house opened and a young man appeared in front of Yuan Jin and Yuan Zhan. This was a young man. He was tall and slender with firm muscles. He was wearing a simple gray robe. Just by standing there casually, he exuded a terrifying aura. It was as if a terrifying cultivator was hiding inside his body and he could attack at any moment. Yuan Jin and Yuan Zhan didn't dare breathe too loudly when they saw that young man. They couldn't help but recall the scene of them being oppressed by that young man. If Lu Ming had been there, he would have been pleasantly surprised. Because Lu Ming knew that young man. He was Lu Ming's old friend. The Wan Shen. Indeed, that young man was the Wan Shen. Back then, Lu Ming and the Wan Shen had entered the primordial godly spirit world together. In the end, the Wan Shen had followed the strong cultivators of the primordial godly spirit world to another world, a world that was more suitable for the Wanshun to practice cultivation. Lu Ming had left the primordial godly spirit world, and they had parted. I hope you're telling the truth. If I find out you're lying to me, you know the consequences. The Wanshun glanced coldly at Yuan Jin and Yuan Zhan. After so many years, the Wanshun's temperament had changed greatly. He had become much sharper and more domineering. Yuan Jin and Yuan Zhan both quivered with fear. When the Wanshun had first arrived, they had used their cultivation to bully the Wanshun. However, they hadn't expected that the Wanshun would display such terrifying talent. His cultivation would increase rapidly, and so would his combat strength. Soon, his cultivation would catch up to theirs and he would oppress them several times. Moreover, the Wanshun's talent was valued by all the strong cultivators of the primordial godly lake. In terms of background, they couldn't compare to the Wanshun. From then on, the Wanshun had left a shadow in their hearts. If they hadn't wanted to teach Lu Ming a lesson, they wouldn't have come to deal with the Wanshun. It's true. It's definitely true. That guy is really powerful. I believe you won't be disappointed, Yuan Jin said hurriedly. Chapter 4206. Is that so? Interesting. Then let's go meet that fellow. The myriad god smiled as he stepped into the air. Yuan Jin and Yuan Zhan were pleasantly surprised as they hurriedly followed. On the other end, Lu Ming, Qiu Moon, and the others were quietly waiting. Qiu Moon was not worried about Lu Ming. After exchanging blows with the celestial soldiers and divine generals, she was well aware of Lu Ming's strength. As long as his opponent did not use cultivation to suppress Lu Ming, she did not believe that anyone could be stronger than Lu Ming in a battle of the same level. Her young master had never disappointed her. He's here. Suddenly, someone cried out in alarm and looked in a certain direction. Simultaneously, everyone's gaze turned in that direction. It's him. It's that monster. He's really here. I didn't think that Yuan Jin and Yuan Zhan would really be able to invite that monster. There's going to be a good show to watch. Quick, get someone to come and watch the show. That monster is about to attack. Many people couldn't help but shout. Even some of the older generation members couldn't help but get excited. The strength that Lu Ming had displayed was extremely powerful, but that monster was even more terrifying in their hearts. A fierce battle was certain to follow. Many people took out their voice transmission jade talismans and called for others to come and watch. Coupled with those who had rushed over after hearing the news, this region was now packed with people. In the sky and on the ground, there were people everywhere. Lu Ming followed everyone's gazes. He was also very curious as to what sort of person the people of the primal divine lake called a monster, and how strong he was. However, Lu Ming was stunned when he saw it. Lu Ming opened his mouth slightly and widened his eyes in disbelief. The myriad god. He naturally recognized the myriad god at a glance. Although the myriad god's temperament had changed significantly, his appearance and life essence aura had not changed at all. He could be recognized at a glance. Lu Ming had not expected to meet the myriad god here. Could it be that the world the myriad gods went to was the primordial divine lake world? That's right. The primordial divine lake has pure primordial divine spirits. The others are either descendants of the primordial divine spirits or existences who cultivate the primordial divine body. It is very similar to the primordial divine spirit world, but the environment is better and the level is higher. I should have thought of this earlier. What a coincidence. Back then, I wasn't able to go to that world, but now, I've come here using this method. In an instant, many thoughts appeared in Lu Ming's mind. This brat is scared. At this moment, Yuan Jin, Yuan Zhan, and Wan Xin had arrived. When Yuan Jin and Yuan Zhan saw the dumbfounded expression on Lu Ming's face, they thought that Lu Ming was afraid. They sneered inwardly and looked forward to seeing Lu Ming being suppressed by the myriad gods. Which one are you talking about? Myriad god asked. It's him. Yuan Jin hurriedly said to Lu Ming. Myriad god's gaze fell on Lu Ming, but it only circled around Lu Ming. When his gaze fell on Autumn Moon, he was stunned. Back in the Taishu dynasty, Myriad god had seen Autumn Moon before. Myriad god's face was immediately filled with joy. In a flash, he appeared in front of Autumn Moon. Lu Ming didn't stop him because the other party was Myriad God. Why should he stop him? Moreover, he realized that even if he wanted to stop him, he couldn't because Myriad God's cultivation was too high. He was certain that Myriad God had stepped into the God Emperor realm. He wasn't sure what God Emperor realm Myriad God was exactly, but he felt that Myriad God's body contained boundless and terrifying energy that was unfathomable. Miss Autumn Moon, you are Miss Autumn Moon. Why are you here? The Myriad God said with a look of joy. Myriad God, why are you here? Autumn Moon also recognized Myriad God and asked curiously. Haha, didn't Lu Ming tell you? Back then, I went to a place to cultivate. That place is here. By the way, where's Lu Ming? Didn't he come with you? Myriad God laughed. He didn't have the sharp temperament from before. His gaze swept around as if he was looking for Lu Ming. Isn't young master right in front of you? Autumn Moon smiled and then took Lu Ming's hand. You mean he's Lu Ming? Miss Autumn Moon, don't lie to me. His life origin aura is completely different. Miss Autumn Moon, are you lying to me because you have fallen in love with someone else? Myriad God obviously didn't believe her. As he spoke, his face sank and he stared at Lu Ming with hostility. What nonsense are you talking about? That's young Master Lu Ming. Autumn Moon's face turned red as she stomped her feet. Myriad God, I've changed my life origin aura because I've cultivated a special cultivation method. It's normal that you don't recognize me. However, I'm indeed Lu Ming. Don't you remember the first time we met? Lu Ming said with a smile. Then, he briefly recounted the first time he met Myriad God. Are you really Lu Ming? The Myriad Gods were still somewhat skeptical. If Lu Ming was alone, even if Lu Ming recounted the first time they met, Myriad God wouldn't believe him. He would think that Lu Ming's memory had been stolen. However, with Autumn Moon around, he had no choice but to believe it. Yes, that's Lu Ming. I can testify. Chiu jumped out and said, You're here too. Looks like you're really Lu Ming. I didn't expect you to change so much after not seeing you for so many years. I almost couldn't recognize you. Myriad God said. He looked at Lu Ming and smiled. You've changed a lot too. Your strength is even more unfathomable. Lu Ming laughed and hugged Myriad God. The others on the side were dumbfounded. What was going on? They originally thought that Myriad God would attack Lu Ming. They didn't expect Myriad God and Lu Ming to know each other as if they were old friends. Yuan Jin and Yuan Zhan were especially dumbfounded. They had gone to great lengths to invite Myriad God here just to deal with Lu Ming. What was going on? It was completely different from what they had expected. What? Wan Shen, we're talking about him. You, quickly suppress him, Yuan Jin couldn't help but shout. However, he regretted it after shouting. His face turned pale. Sure enough, Myriad God turned around and looked at him with a gloomy face. You two called me here just to deal with my brother? Are you itching for a bone? Then I'll help you fix it? Run! Before Myriad God could finish his words, Yuan Jin and Yuan Zhan's faces changed drastically. They retreated without thinking. You want to run in front of me? Myriad God shouted coldly. He stretched out a hand and grabbed at the air. Suddenly, an incomparably huge palm appeared in the sky and pressed down on Yuan Jin and Yuan Zhan. It was as if a giant had suddenly appeared in the sky. No, Yuan Zhan and Yuan Jin roared and resisted with all their strength. However, their strength couldn't withstand a single blow from this palm. With a boom, the two of them smashed into the ground like two meteors. Chapter 4207. Yuan Jin and Yuan Zhan were smashed to the ground by Wan Shen's palm. They lay on the ground, twitching and coughing up blood. It was a horrible sight. Their faces were pale, and their bones were almost all broken. The others on the side looked pale, but no one dared to say anything. Even Yuan Jin and Yuan Zhan's elders didn't dare to say anything. First, Wan Shen's strength was too strong. Second, Wan Shen's identity was too special. He had unparalleled talent, and all the important people of the primordial divine lake had high hopes for him. He was known as the seed of hope of the primordial divine spirit clan. No one could beat Wan Shen in terms of background. Who dared to touch him? Yuan Jin and Yuan Zhan's elders could only turn a blind eye. After dealing with Yuan Jin and Yuan Zhan, Wan Shen looked at Fei Yi and said coldly, "I heard that you attacked my brother. What? Are you bullying him because he's new here, or because you're a great supreme god?" Fei Ye's face turned pale, and he explained, "Wan Shen, I was just exchanging pointers with him." Exchanging pointers? Oh, I'll also exchange pointers with you. Come on. Wan Shen said as he stepped forward and walked toward Fei Yi. Fei Ye's face turned even uglier, and he shouted, "Don't go too far." "Yes, I'm going too far. What can you do about it?" Wan Shen sneered and continued walking toward Fei Yi. "Don't think that I'm afraid of you." Flying Leaf was enraged by the myriad gods pressuring. He roared and unleashed his aura. He once again transformed into a towering tree. This time, the tree he transformed into was more than 10 times taller than before. It blotted out the sky and the sun, and its aura covered the mountains and rivers. His aura was terrifying. That's the second layer of the great supreme god realm. Lu Ming's eyes flashed. Fei Yi released his aura, and his strength was shocking. He had the strength of the second layer of the great supreme god realm. He wasn't an ordinary cultivator of the second layer of the great supreme god realm, but a peerless genius. He could probably fight against an ordinary cultivator of the fourth layer of the great supreme god realm. If he attacked with his full strength, Lu Ming wouldn't be his match. Lu Ming couldn't help but worry for Wan Shen. However, Wan Shen's expression didn't change in front of such a vast aura. "Come." The myriad god said indifferently. "You forced me to do this." Fei Yi roared, and countless leaves flew out from the huge treetop. This time, the leaves did not scatter. Instead, they gathered together and transformed into a beam of green light that blasted towards the myriad gods. The strength of his aura was many times stronger than when he was dealing with Lu Ming. Seeing this move, Lu Ming knew that he would not be able to block it with his own strength, unless he used the mysterious ice rod. However, the myriad god remained calm. Boom! At this moment, Wan Shen moved. The muscles on one of his arms bulged, and there was divine power circulating on it. Then he punched out. Heaven and earth shook violently as a terrifying fist energy burst forth from Wan Shen's fist and collided with Fei Ye's attack. Then, one could see that Fei Ye's attack was as weak as tofu. He was directly pierced through by Wan Shen's fist. The fist energy didn't stop there. It bombarded the trunk of the huge tree that Fei Yi had transformed into, and a huge hole was blasted open. A mournful scream was heard as the huge tree rapidly shrank. Fei Yi turned back into his human form, and there was a hole in his abdomen. Blood was flowing out. Fei Yi kept coughing up blood. His face was pale, and his aura was weak. He had been severely injured. However, his eyes were still fixed on the myriad god. He shouted in disbelief, Your cultivation has broken through again? Don't worry. I only used the cultivation of the second layer of the Emperor God realm. Why would I need to use a higher cultivation to deal with you?" The myriad god said indifferently. Fei Yi was so angry that he coughed up another mouthful of blood. The surrounding geniuses were also pale. They looked at Lu Ming in shock. The myriad god's divine power had become even stronger. It seemed to have surpassed theirs. So powerful. The myriad god's improvement is too fast. His future is limitless. His talent is too strong. Our primordial divine spirit clan has a chance to rise. Some of the older generation figures who were watching the battle sighed. However, their voices were filled with surprise. This guy is really monstrous. Even Lu Ming couldn't help but sigh. He knew the myriad god's background. The myriad god had evolved from the blood of many primordial divine spirits. He had great potential and talent. It was really terrifying. Now, Lu Ming still couldn't see through the myriad god's cultivation. However, Lu Ming estimated that the myriad god's cultivation was above the third layer of the Emperor God realm. Relying on his forbidden body, his cultivation speed was already monstrous. However, the myriad god seemed to be even more monstrous. It seemed like the primordial divine lake was really suitable for the myriad god's cultivation. The myriad god had made the right choice to come here. Who else wants to try? After dealing with Fei Yi, the myriad god didn't even look at Fei Yi. He looked at Song Zhan and the others. Song Zhan and the others turned pale. They looked unsightly. The myriad god, we're just here to watch the show. We have no intention of fighting. Right. I'm just here to watch the show. Only Fei Yi will fight. Right, I remember that I have something to do. I'll leave first. I also have something to do. Song Zhan and the other geniuses who were as famous as Fei Yi found excuses to leave. The myriad god, you're very impressive now. Lu Ming walked over and laughed. These people are just itching for a beating. If you give them an inch, they'll take a mile. They'll have no choice but to use some thunderous methods. The myriad god smiled. Right, where are you staying now? The myriad god asked again. On that mountain. Lu Ming pointed to the mountain peak in the distance that they had come down from earlier. Oh, then let's go up. I still have many questions to ask you. The myriad god said. Then Lu Ming and the others returned the way they had come. On the way, they chatted as they walked. Lu Ming briefly recounted his experiences over the years and why his life origin aura had changed. Lu Ming was wary of the Heavenly Palace. In the Heavenly Palace, these things could never be spoken of. However, the primordial divine lake was at odds with the Heavenly Palace. In that case, there was no harm in speaking of it. It did not matter if others knew that he had a taboo body. I see. To think that there's such a mysterious cultivation method in this world that can sever the past and future. Even the life origin aura is different, the myriad god exclaimed. Right, myriad god? Is this the world you came from? Lu Ming asked again. That's right. The myriad god nodded and explained. There's a passage in the primordial divine lake that connects to the primordial divine spirit world. These two worlds are actually very similar. They both gave birth to primordial divine spirits. They both gave birth to primordial divine spirits? Lu Ming was shocked. Chapter 4208. A place that gave birth to a primordial divine spirit was no small matter. Yes, but the primordial divine lake is of a higher level. In the primordial divine lake, 72 primordial divine spirits were born. Moreover, the territory here is larger and the cultivation environment is better. There are primordial divine spirits and other experts guarding it. The primordial divine spirit world that we went to was considered the peripheral world of the primordial divine lake. We were looking for geniuses who cultivated the primordial divine body. Wan Shun continued to explain. Looking for geniuses who cultivated the primordial divine spirit body and bringing them to this world? However, many of the races outside are controlled by the Heavenly Palace. Lu Ming said with a look of doubt. Because the Heavenly Palace ruled the universe, the races of the universe all obeyed the orders of the Heavenly Palace. But here, they were looking for geniuses who cultivated the primordial divine body. Wasn't this raising a tiger to invite calamity? So, at first, we only brought them to the peripheral worlds to let them cultivate. If there are outstanding geniuses who are suitable for training, we will consider bringing them to the primordial divine lake. However, before bringing them here, they have to go through many tests and tests. Only those who reject the Heavenly Palace and can be used by the primordial divine lake will be brought to the primordial divine lake for training. However, there are very few of them. There is no other way. The primordial divine lake has few geniuses, so we can only look for them from the outside. Those who are not suitable will be sent back, Wan Shun explained. Lu Ming suddenly thought of Murong Qiushue. Murong Qiushue should have made contact with the experts of the primordial divine lake. It was said that he was taken in as a disciple by an important person. However, they met later on in the primitive universe. Now that he thought about it, Murong Qiushue should have failed the test and been sent out. The primordial divine lake world has existed since the beginning of the universe. It has been passed down until now and has always been fighting with the Heavenly Palace. However, the Heavenly Palace is too strong and the primordial divine lake is no match for it. It can only float in the universe. Saying this, Wan Shun's eyes filled with hatred. Now I know that the primordial divine spirit body was destroyed by the Heavenly Palace. The blood of the primordial divine spirit flows in my body. As they spoke, they returned to the mountain. Although ordinary people couldn't come up to this mountain peak, however, Myriad God had a special status. He could go anywhere in the 4 cities of the primordial divine lake. Lu Ming, I heard that you are very strong. You easily defeated Fei Yi in a battle of the same level. My hands are itching. Why don't we have a spar? The Myriad God said. If I were to spar with you, wouldn't I be looking for trouble? I can't even see through your cultivation. Lu Ming shook his head. What a joke. Flying Leaf, who had unleashed his full combat strength, had been beaten half to death by Wan Shen's punch. He was not looking for trouble. Of course, I won't use my cultivation level to oppress you. I'll suppress my cultivation level to the 9th godly emperor layer. The Myriad God Dao looked like he was itching for a fight. Oh, that's fine. Lu Ming nodded in agreement. He was also very curious about how strong Myriad God was. Back when he had just separated from Myriad God's ability to fight across levels wasn't particularly exaggerated. However, he knew very well that it was because the potential of the myriad deities had yet to be unlocked. So many years had passed. How much potential had the myriad deities developed? Wan Shen and Lu Ming found a spacious area and stood facing each other. The 3 people from Autumn Moon and Qiuqiu stood in the distance and watched. Lu Ming, be careful, said the Myriad God Dao as he released his aura. It was the aura of the 9th godly emperor layer. The Myriad God Dao had suppressed his cultivation level to the 9th godly emperor layer. Bang! The Myriad God Dao took a step forward and charged at Lu Ming like a bolt of lightning. As he charged, the Myriad God Dao's muscles twitched. His body was covered in a layer of divine power as he threw a punch at Lu Ming. Wherever the fist passed, the void rumbled and exploded. Its power was terrifying. Good! Shouted Lu Ming. He circulated his forbidden energy and his body was covered in a layer of dazzling light. He threw a punch at the Myriad God Dao as well. This punch contained several ancient secret skills with astonishing offensive power. Boom! When the 2 fists collided, it was like 2 stars colliding, producing a powerful shockwave. Then, Lu Ming and the Myriad God Dao's bodies trembled at the same time as they retreated. What powerful strength! Lu Ming felt his fist go slightly numb. Although he hadn't used his full strength just now, the power he erupted with was already very shocking. It was at least at the stage where he could fight across 7 levels. However, it couldn't do anything to the Myriad God Dao. The moment the 2 fists collided, he felt that the power of the Myriad God Dao's fist was astonishing. It was pure physical strength and divine power strength. The Myriad God Dao's physical body had boundless strength and was terrifyingly powerful. He was like a true primordial god. His divine power was rich and condensed, pure and ancient. It was equivalent to awakening the divine power quintessence multiple times. In short, it was boundless and indestructible. It was extremely terrifying. Powerful. Much more powerful than before. This divine power should be equivalent to awakening the divine power quintessence 8 times. Lu Ming praised inwardly. The Myriad God Dao had evolved from a large number of primordial gods' flesh and blood. He cultivated all kinds of primordial divine power and awakened the divine power quintessence. His talent was too strong. His current divine power was comparable to that of someone who had awakened the divine power quintessence 8 times. Otherwise, how could he contend against the taboo power? Is this the taboo power? It's so powerful. Lu Ming, you didn't use your full strength, right? Neither did I. Let's go all out then. Don't hold back. The Myriad God Dao laughed, his fighting spirit surging. As you wish. Lu Ming roared. All the cells in his body trembled. All kinds of secret techniques and ancient secret techniques in his cells erupted and merged together. Shwa! Lu Ming's palm was like a blade as he chopped down. A huge blade light slashed at the Myriad God Dao. This move was a combination of even more ancient secret techniques. For example, the Great God Saber Art, Great Shatter Art, Great Destruction Art, Great Aurora Art. This move contained many kinds of terrifying offensive power. Its power was even more terrifying than before. Gate of Domination. The myriad god Dao roared. Above his head, a huge stone door appeared. It was ancient and powerful. This was the Origin's secret technique, Gate of Domination. Lu Ming had controlled it before. Now it was in his past body. The huge Gate of Domination rushed toward Lu Ming, letting out a terrifying roar. Shockingly, an enormous monster emerged from the Sovereign Lord's gate. This monster was incomparably huge and looked very ferocious. There were several huge horns on its head. This is a primordial god? No, it's a primordial god's soul. Lu Ming's heart skipped a beat. He did not expect that the Gate of Domination could be cultivated to such a high level that it could summon the corresponding primordial god's soul. Chapter 4209. The soul of the primordial god that appeared in the Gate of Domination opened its bloody mouth and bit down on the saber gleam that Lu Ming had slashed out. However, it only lasted for a few breaths of time before the primordial god's soul couldn't withstand the saber light's attack. It opened its mouth and was cleaved in half, its body rapidly retreating. Clang! The saber light followed, slashing at the god's gate. The god's gate shook violently and flew back to Wanshen. However, the saber gleam that Lu Ming slashed out was blocked. Amazing! Again, 10,000 Law's spear, colored glass fire, Wanshen growled. His divine power grew even stronger, pushing it to the peak of the 9th godly emperor realm. All sorts of secret techniques appeared above his head. Soon, more than 20 secret techniques appeared above Wanshen's head. All of them were Origin secret techniques. More than 20 Origin secret techniques all exuded a terrifying aura. Every Origin secret technique severed at least 6 shackles. Some of them even severed 7 shackles. Lu Ming's pupils shrank. It was too shocking. At myriad god's age and cultivation level, even if he could sever 6 or 7 shackles of a single Origin technique, he would be 1 in 10,000. He would be a peerless monster. All God, on the other hand, had over 20 quintessence secret arts that had reached this level. Lu Ming, if you can't handle it, you have to speak, Wanshen said. Don't worry. Go all out. Lu Ming's eyes shone brightly, revealing a powerful battle intent. It was rare for him to show such an expression in a battle of the same level. This was because he felt pressured. He'd already reached the limit of the godly emperor realm. He could fight across 9 levels. He'd originally thought that no one would be able to pressure him in a battle of the same level. He hadn't expected Wanshen to be able to do so. Boom! Lu Ming activated the battle character art, increasing his battle prowess to the peak by 6 times. Wanshen's eyes lit up. Alright, so you still have something up your sleeve. Then I won't hold back. With that, myriad god charged towards Lu Ming. Over 20 Origin Source secret techniques also shot towards Lu Ming. Every Origin Source secret technique emitted terrifying ripples. Some were fast, some were very hot, and some were as heavy as a mountain. Each Origin Source secret technique had its own characteristics, but they all had one thing in common, which was that their attack power was extremely shocking. Good timing! Lu Ming's fighting spirit surged as he pushed his forbidden power to the limit. With a wave of his hand, various secret techniques appeared around him. They were all ancient secret techniques, and there were even more of them than the myriad gods. The secret techniques of both sides clashed in the air. Boom, boom, boom. Amidst the dazzling light, the two of them fought fiercely. Every second, there would be hundreds of collisions. This area was completely enveloped by all kinds of divine light. Ordinary people couldn't see the situation inside at all. They could only hear a series of violent rumbles. The terrifying energy swept out in all directions, and some of it continuously bombarded the ground. However, this mountain was the place where the divine lords and primordial divine spirits cultivated in seclusion. It was extremely tough, and their attacks couldn't even leave a mark on it. This was also the reason why they chose to fight here. In the distance, Chiu Moon and the others circulated their divine power to their eyes. With their God-Emperor cultivation, they could see the battle clearly. So terrifying, what kind of monsters are they? Is this still the power of a God-Emperor? They're really sick. How many levels can they cross to fight? Anyway, I'm definitely no match for them. The beautiful faces of Chiu Yu's two senior sisters were filled with shock. It was already a miracle for such a person to appear, but now, they saw two of them. It was really a miracle of miracles. The battle between the two of them became more and more intense. In the beginning, the two of them still held back. After all, they were friends and were only sparring, so they were afraid of hurting each other. However, after exchanging blows, they realized that each other's strength was above their expectations. Therefore, they became more at ease and slowly raised their fighting strength to the peak. Soon, the two of them had exchanged hundreds of blows, but there was still no clear winner. Awesome, awesome. Lu Ming's fighting spirit grew stronger and stronger. He casually used all kinds of ancient secret techniques. However, Wan Xun's strength was also very terrifying. He had used more than 20 offensive origin source secret techniques at the beginning. Later, he used other origin source secret techniques, such as defensive ones, speed ones, and so on. When combined, his fighting strength was about the same as Lu Ming's. The two of them couldn't do anything to each other. Later on, Lu Ming even triggered the battle formula to increase his fighting strength by 7 times. However, he discovered that it was the same as last time. After activating the battle character incantation, the strength of his taboo power actually decreased. This caused his battle strength to remain at the level where he could fight across 9 levels, unable to surpass it. Lu Ming knew that this was the limit, and it was difficult to surpass it. Soon, the two of them had exchanged hundreds of blows. Boom! Finally, with a heaven-shaking explosion, the two of them retreated at the same time and stood facing each other. Amazing, amazing! Lu Ming, you are many times more powerful than before. Wan Xun sighed as he gradually withdrew his aura. The battle had reached this point, and there was no need to continue. Lu Ming also withdrew his aura, and the fluctuations coming from his body weakened. Wan Xun, you're the amazing one. I originally thought that I could suppress you after obtaining the forbidden power, but it seems like I was overthinking things. Lu Ming said. He couldn't help but sigh. Wan Xun was just too powerful. After fusing many ancient secret techniques, his forbidden power had received a massive boost in quality. It was invincible and terrifying. However, Wan Xun's divine body was too strong, and his origin source divine power had been awakened too many times. Coupled with the origin source secret techniques that had severed many shackles, he was completely capable of contending against Wan Xun. In truth, I lost. Your battle strength has already reached the limit of the deity emperor realm. You can fight across 9 levels. Even though I can fight against cultivators who are 9 cultivation levels higher than me, that's because I'm suppressing my cultivation level. My original cultivation level is the Great Supreme God layer. After breaking through to the Great Supreme God layer, my original strength and my original secret techniques have advanced by leaps and bounds. Even though I'm suppressing my cultivation level to the 9th Godly Emperor layer, my original strength and my original strength haven't changed. When I was in the Deity Emperor realm, I could only fight across 8 levels. That's why I lost. Wan Xun said. Don't be modest. Come, let's drink. Lu Ming smiled and walked over to pat Wan Xun's shoulder. After a while, the rich aroma of meat wafted out of Lu Ming's residence. Lu Ming had a large pile of storage rings on him, and there were all sorts of things in them. Fine wine, ingredients, spices, and other things were naturally not lacking. Although he didn't need to eat now and wasn't hungry, he would still occasionally eat to satisfy his cravings. Chapter 42:10. The group chatted as they ate. Lu Ming, you said that your past self mainly cultivates various kinds of divine powers. Why don't you come here to cultivate? Here, you can cultivate various kinds of divine powers and Origin's secret skills. The effects are very good. Myriad God said. I had such a plan. Lu Ming nodded. Then come. Let me tell you, there are great opportunities in the primordial divine lake. The reason I cultivated so quickly is because of the opportunities one found in the primordial divine lake. When your past self comes, we can go together. Myriad God said. That lake in the primordial divine lake? Lu Ming looked toward the west. That's right. That lake is called the primordial divine lake. That's how this world got its name. In ancient times, 72 primordial divine spirits were born from that lake. The primordial divine spirits said. Myriad God explained. All of them were born from that lake. This time, Lu Ming, Qiu, and the others were shocked. They had heard that 72 primordial divine spirits were born in the primordial divine lake world. They had thought that these 72 primordial divine spirits were spread out, and different regions gave birth to different primordial divine spirits. For example, the primordial divine spirit world that Lu Ming had been to had 13 famous mountains, and each mountain had given birth to a primordial divine spirit. But it was different here. The 72 primordial divine spirits were all born from that lake. This was a little shocking. Moreover, these 72 primordial divine spirits were born from eggs. After they left, the eggshells were left behind. These eggshells are peerless treasures for those who cultivate divine power. They are extremely beneficial for cultivating divine power, awakening divine power, and comprehending Origin's secret arts. In the primordial divine lake world, even a fingernail-sized eggshell is priceless. It's very useful even for high-level god emperors. Moreover, there are primordial divine clouds and diluted divine herbs in the primordial divine lake. They are all very valuable. Myriad gods said. The primordial divine lake shouldn't be easy to enter, right? Lu Ming said. Naturally, he would not be blindly overjoyed. Since there were so many precious treasures in the primordial divine lake, if they could be obtained easily, then how could they have stayed until now? You're right. The waves of the primordial divine lake are monstrous. Moreover, the water of the primordial divine lake is not ordinary water. Every drop of water is extremely heavy and accompanied by huge waves. Its power is extremely shocking. In addition, there is also an incomparably powerful pressure. It is very difficult for ordinary people to barge in. Only those with great talent can enter easily. That place has become a training ground for the young geniuses of the primordial divine lake. It's also a treasure hunting ground. Tell your past self to come here. Once you get some primordial divine spirit eggshells, your cultivation base will definitely improve by leaps and bounds. Myriad gods Dao. Lu Ming's eyes lit up. All right, I'll open the wormhole and let my past self come over. Lu Ming nodded. Immediately he took out 36 formation discs and injected his forbidden energy into them. Suddenly, the 36 discs floated in the air, emitting a bright light. A vortex appeared in the middle, spinning continuously. Everyone waited quietly. After a period of time, a wormhole was successfully opened. Qiu Moon and the others stared at the wormhole with bright eyes. Not long after, a figure suddenly appeared in the wormhole. The figure was slender and his long hair fluttered in the wind. He slowly became clearer. Young master! Qiu Moon could not help but exclaim in surprise. That's right. The figure was Lu Ming's past self. His appearance and aura were exactly the same as Lu Ming's past self. Although Lu Ming's current self was still Lu Ming, his appearance and aura were different after all. Qiu Yu felt a little strange in her heart. At this moment, when she saw his past self, she felt closer to him and immediately flew over. Qiu Moon. Lu Ming's past self smiled and nodded. His figure then left the wormhole and appeared on the ground. Lu Ming's current self waved his hand and put away the 36 formation discs. Lu Ming, this is your past self? You two are the same person. How strange, how strange. The 10,000 gods glanced back and forth between the past self and the present self. They clicked their tongues in amazement. Qiu Moon also glanced back and forth between the two Lu Mings. She was extremely curious. Don't worry. Even though we're two people, we're still one. We're both Lu Ming, said Lu Ming's current self. Lu Ming, your past self is not good enough. He only has the strength of the 7th godly emperor layer. You have to catch up, said the 10,000 gods, staring at his past self. His past self's cultivation level was indeed the 7th godly emperor layer. After all, his past self had cultivated the 10,000 cosmos Tao formula. He had many different kinds of godly strength. Now, he could control 21 kinds of godly strength and secret skills. Now that he had broken through to the 7th godly emperor layer, it was already an amazing speed. It had something to do with his talent and the cultivation conditions of the Dragon Clan's mother planet. Of course, it also had to do with Ao Qian and Fei Huang's guidance. 10,000 gods, let's go to the primordial godly lake. I came here for the primordial godly lake. Lu Ming went over and said, "Let's go," said the 10,000 gods. He turned around and led the way. Lu Ming's past self and present self, as well as Chiu Moon and the others, followed closely behind him. Very quickly, they left the huge city and flew west. Boom boom boom. After flying for a while, they heard a deafening rumble. It was the sound of waves crashing. After a while, they could see the lake more clearly. The vast and boundless lake was like a vast ocean, vast and boundless. Lu Ming stood in the sky and channeled the taboo power into his eyes. He could barely see the other side of the lake. There was a huge city there. That was the city on the western shore of the primordial godly lake. In the lake, huge waves rose to a height of over 10,000 meters. When they fell, they created a deafening explosion. It was terrifying. There were also huge whirlpools in some parts of the lake. The whirlpools spun crazily. The center was pitch black, as if it could crush everything. The closer we get to the center of the primordial godly lake, the more powerful the waves are. It's also more dangerous. Correspondingly, we can obtain more opportunities. There are almost no opportunities in the outer area. Let's enter the primordial godly lake from the center, said the 10,000 gods. All right. Lu Ming and the others nodded. They continued flying into the primordial godly lake. Whoosh whoosh whoosh, above the primordial divine lake, there was a terrifying howling wind. It was like a sharp blade. Lu Ming and the rest could only set up defenses on their bodies to block it. Very quickly, they had flown 30,000 li. Let's go down from here and slowly move forward. We should be able to withstand it. I'm afraid something unexpected will happen if we go further, said the 10,000 gods. Chapter 42:11. Lu Ming and company naturally had no objections to the myriad god's suggestion. After all, the myriad god had been cultivating here for many years and was most familiar with the environment. The closer to the center of the primordial divine lake, the stronger it was. The eggshell of the primordial divine spirit was at the bottom of the lake. The other divine herbs and treasures were also at the bottom of the lake. To obtain these treasures, they had to search from the bottom of the lake and sink to the bottom of the lake. If they were to fly too far and sink to the bottom of the lake, the danger of the environment below might exceed what they could withstand. If they were not careful, they might die. They would first sink to a safe area before slowly pushing forward. This way, the power would gradually increase. If they could not withstand it, they would not be caught off guard and could slowly retreat. This was the safest method. Immediately, they set up layers of defense around themselves before diving into the lake. Many shields appeared around Lu Ming's past self. This was the Origin's secret skill, Tianxian Shield. The current Profound Sky Shield was many times stronger than before. It enveloped his body tightly. As for his present body, he used his great defensive technique to cover his body with a layer of light. Boom! The moment Lu Ming entered the lake, he felt like dozens of mountains had crashed into him. Even his great defensive technique trembled. What a powerful force! This lake water is no ordinary lake water. It contains an ancient aura, as though it was condensed from divine power. Lu Ming sensed it carefully and found that the surrounding lake water was extremely viscous and heavy. When a wave came, it was as though dozens of divine mountains had crashed into it. The force was astonishing. This lake water seemed to be condensed from ancient divine power, like the divine power of a primordial divine spirit. Of course, it was impossible for this to be the divine power of a primordial divine spirit. It only resembled it a little. If it was real, they would not be able to withstand it. Fortunately, the strength of the lake water was something they could withstand. Because the 72 primordial divine spirits were born here, the lake water here is filled with the chi of the primordial divine spirits, becoming violent and terrifying. It's a pity that we can't absorb it. However, there are some treasures that we can find in such an environment. The myriad god explained. Everyone kept sinking. The primordial divine lake was very deep, and they sank for a few thousand miles before reaching the bottom of the lake. Although there weren't any huge waves at the bottom of the lake, there was an undercurrent surging with terrifying power. However, this was still within the acceptable range of everyone. This place has already been explored by others. We don't need to waste time. Let's move forward. Myriad gods Tao. Everyone stepped forward, breaking through the waves. In next to no time, they traveled another 20,000 kilometers. The further they went, the greater the pressure of the waves became. In addition, there was also a terrifying pressure at the bottom of the lake. This kind of pressure was ancient, like the pressure of a primordial god. This kind of pressure could not only affect the body, but also the mind and soul. They seemed to hear a terrifying roar coming from ancient times. Those with weak willpower would find it difficult to continue moving forward. At this point, the two senior sisters of Autumn Moon were already struggling. Lu Ming, on the other hand, felt fine. Although Lu Ming's cultivation was the lowest among all of them, he was still very strong. However, he had a forbidden body. His soul was scattered in all his cells, and he could control all kinds of ancient secret techniques, so it was easy for him to resist. As for his past self, his cultivation was only at the 7th Divine Emperor realm, but his body was emitting all kinds of light and all kinds of Origin's secret techniques to resist the pressure around him. In addition, Lu Ming's willpower was strong enough. The pressure of the primordial gods was not too strong for Lu Ming. Senior sisters, are you all right? Chiao Yu looked at her two senior sisters worriedly. We're fine. Let's keep moving. Autumn Moon's two senior sisters said. They were all geniuses and had their pride. Seeing that Lu Ming's cultivation was lower than theirs, they naturally did not want to give up. They continued moving forward and soon, they had traveled another 10,000 kilometers. The pressure was even stronger. Chiao Yu's two senior sisters were already panting. However, when they arrived here, they finally found something. That's a divine power source orb. Lu Ming's eyes lit up. He saw a few crystal-like things not far away. They were divine power source orbs, treasures that could help people activate Origin's secret techniques. Such treasures were very useful when one was at the lower level of the immortal state. Many powerful clans usually bought them to cultivate their juniors. The price of such consumables had always been high and they were very popular. One of Autumn Moon's senior sisters was the closest to them. She stepped forward and put away the divine power source orbs. Then she continued moving forward. Soon she found something else. Not far away, a divine medicine was swaying at the bottom of the lake. Needless to say, a divine medicine that could grow in such an environment was extraordinary. Lu Ming's past self was closer. He stepped forward and picked the divine medicine, then returned and gave it to his current self. The past and the present were one, so there was no need to talk about them. The treasures that were useful to his past self were kept by his past self. The treasures that were useful to his current self were kept by his current self. This divine medicine contained powerful life energy and was most suitable for the cultivation of a forbidden body. It was most suitable to keep it with his current self. Next, they continued to make discoveries. Divine power source orbs, divine medicine, divine origin flowers, and other things would be found from time to time. Those who were closer to them would pick them up. However, when they traveled about 10,000 miles, the two senior sisters of Autumn Moon had almost reached their limit and could no longer move forward. If they continued, they would exceed their limits and be injured. Not only would their bodies be injured, but their souls would also be injured. Physical injuries were easy to recover, but soul injuries were more troublesome. We won't continue. We'll stop here and explore the surrounding area. You can continue. The two senior sisters of Autumn Moon said. Senior sisters, be careful. Autumn Moon said with concern. Junior sisters of Autumn Moon, don't worry. We will be careful. I wish you all the best. One of the senior sisters said with a smile. After that, the two senior sisters of Autumn Moon stayed behind and explored horizontally, not approaching the center of the primordial divine lake. Lu Ming and the others continued to move forward. If they wanted to find a treasure like the primordial divine spirit eggshell, they had to go to the center of the primordial divine lake. Without the two senior sisters of Autumn Moon's Autumn Moon, their speed suddenly increased. Soon, they traveled another 20,000 miles. This place was already 90,000 miles away from the shore of the lake. The pressure here was even stronger. Lu Ming's past self felt the strong pressure, and the heavenly mystic shield was constantly vibrating. After all, the cultivation of his past self was still a little low, so he was facing a lot of pressure. Chapter 42:12. After all, his past self only had the strength of the seventh godly emperor layer. It was already a miracle that he had made it this far. His past self could withstand the pressure of the soul, but the pressure of the cultivation level was a bit difficult for him. At that moment, his present self walked over and used his great defensive technique to protect his past self. That made the pressure on his past self lessen. On the way, they found many things, but unfortunately, they didn't find the original godly spirit's eggshell. When they were 120,000 li away from the shore, suddenly, Autumn Moon's eyes widened and she looked in a certain direction. There was something on the ground that was emitting a milky white light. Pure and terrifying energy was emanating from it. That thing was only the size of a fingernail, but it was like a sun, constantly emitting energy. The original godly spirit's eggshell. It's the original godly spirit's eggshell. Ha! We're lucky. The 10,000 gods smiled and said, "Miss Autumn Moon, it's yours. Take it." "Young master, do you want it?" Autumn Moon looked at Lu Ming's past self. She knew that Lu Ming's past self had cultivated all kinds of godly strength. The original godly spirit's eggshell was very helpful to him. "No need. You found it, so take it. There must be more at the bottom of the lake." The past self smiled. Autumn Moon didn't insist. She nodded and walked towards the original godly spirit's eggshell. When she arrived next to the original godly spirit's eggshell, Autumn Moon's heart suddenly emitted a powerful 9-colored light. They could vaguely see a 9-orifice heart. The sacred heart of 9-orifice. Autumn Moon's sacred heart of 9-orifice appeared and a 9-colored light enveloped the original godly spirit's eggshell. Then, the original godly spirit's eggshell was absorbed by the sacred heart of 9-orifice. A powerful aura emanated from Chiao Yu's body, but it was retracted in the next moment. She couldn't refine the original godly spirit's eggshell so easily. She had to refine it slowly. After discovering the original godly spirit's eggshell, they were excited and continued moving forward. After a short time, they found another one the size of a fingernail, but this time, there were other people nearby. A prodigy from the primordial divine lake also discovered the primordial divine spirit eggshell. However, under the pressure of the myriad gods, the other party could only retreat. This piece of primordial god eggshell was put away by Lu Ming's past self. But from then on, their good luck seemed to have run out. After searching for half a day, they didn't find a single piece of primitive god spirit eggshell. They didn't even find one the size of a fingernail. At this time, they were already about 200,000 miles away from the lakeside. At this point, the pressure was already terrifying. Rumble! At the bottom of the lake, the undercurrent was surging violently. Moreover, it contained a terrifying pressure that continuously battered their bodies. In front of them, there seemed to be a terrifying power that was like a barrier. They advanced a few times, but they were pushed back by that power. This is the limit. Every time I come here, I'll be forced out. Myriad gods Tao. You didn't even go there once? Lu Ming's present body asked. No. I'm guessing that there's definitely a great opportunity inside. Unfortunately, I can't enter. The power is too strong. The myriad gods shook their heads. I don't know if my taboo power can break it. I'll give it a try. Wait for me. Lu Ming's present body stepped forward. Young master, be careful. Chiao Yu said worriedly. Don't worry, I'll be fine. I'll do my best. Lu Ming smiled. He then took a step forward and dashed forward. Boom. A powerful force rushed toward Lu Ming. Break for me. Lu Ming shouted. The taboo power completely erupted and gathered on his palm. Lu Ming slashed out with his palm with all his strength. Boom! Lu Ming's palm collided with the force in front of him, and a violent explosion erupted. A large amount of lake water in the surroundings was repelled to the sides. Lu Ming's body trembled, and his arm kept shaking. However, Lu Ming's eyes lit up. He felt that the force in front of him wasn't unbreakable. Under the attack of the taboo power, there seemed to be a flaw, and a gap was torn open. "All right, let's continue," Lu Ming shouted, and pushed the taboo power to the extreme. His palms struck out continuously. Boom, boom, boom. Intense rumbling sounds continued to ring out, and the entire area trembled. The lake water was being expelled, forming a vacuum. Although Lu Ming's body kept shaking, the force in front of him was indeed slowly being torn apart. Bam, bam. With every tear, Lu Ming took a step forward, and the ground under his feet shook violently. However, with every step, Lu Ming took another step forward. In this way, Lu Ming took more than 10 steps in a short period of time, advancing more than 10 meters. However, what made Lu Ming's heart sink was that the further he advanced, the stronger the force became. The pressure on Lu Ming was also increasing. After a few more steps, Lu Ming's body kept shaking. He was under great pressure. He used all his strength to attack, but it was difficult to continue tearing apart that force. Almost there, thought Lu Ming. He had the feeling that he was about to tear apart that force. As long as he could tear it apart, he would be able to enter the next area. However, the pressure was too great. Lu Ming couldn't break through it no matter what he did. "Ice Xian Rod," Lu Ming shouted in his heart. He took out the Bingxian rod and attacked with all his might. However, it was useless. It wasn't a problem of attacking power. In terms of attacking power, the 10,000 gods were much stronger than him. In addition, there were many divine the arch-gods in the primordial sacred lake. Those above the 4th level of the divine god realm, and even those at the 7th, 8th, and 9th level of the divine god realm were stronger than Lu Ming. However, none of them could break through. Lu Ming was able to achieve this because of the special nature of the forbidden force. Therefore, using the Ice Xian rod and attacking with his hand had the same effect. It was the effect of the forbidden force. "I can't break it. Unfortunately, my cultivation is still too low. The forbidden force isn't strong enough. If I could break through to the divine emperor realm, I would be able to break through this force and enter," thought Lu Ming. "Let's try again." Lu Ming gritted his teeth. He squeezed out the last bit of energy in his body and attacked with all his might. Bang! Finally, Lu Ming took another step forward. He took another step forward. He was even closer to breaking through, but he still didn't break through. He was still a bit away. Lu Ming felt that he was about to break through. Suddenly, Lu Ming's eyes widened. At this point, he could vaguely see the scene behind the force. Previously, their vision had been completely blocked. They couldn't see what was in front of them. But now, Lu Ming could vaguely see something. He was shocked. Chapter 42:13. Lu Ming was shocked. The primordial god's spirit eggshell. He could vaguely see the primordial god's spirit eggshell in front of him. And it wasn't just one piece, but many pieces. And they weren't as small as a fingernail, but very large pieces. Shocking, extremely shocking. "Break in. I must break in." Lu Ming roared in his heart. Although these primordial god spirit eggshells weren't very useful to the taboo body, they were very useful to Wan Xin, Autumn Moon, and his past self. Especially his past self. Although the past and present were two separate entities, they were still one. The stronger his past self was, the stronger he was. It also meant that Lu Ming was stronger. If he could get the primordial god spirit eggshells in front of him, his cultivation would definitely skyrocket. Whether it was the origin divine power factor, the primordial god body, or the origin secret technique, they would all be very helpful. He had to rush in. He had to get it. However, he had reached his limit and couldn't take another step forward. How should he break in? Right, the purple copper coffin. Lu Ming's eyes lit up. Let's give it a try. The purple copper coffin should have a lot to do with the primordial god spirit. As long as he took out the purple copper coffin, he should be able to pass. With a thought, the purple copper coffin appeared in Lu Ming's hand. Go over and prepare to break through. As soon as the purple copper coffin appeared, Wan Shun's past self knew what his present self was going to do. He shouted and rushed forward with Autumn Moon and Wan Shun, arriving behind Lu Ming. Boom! Lu Ming covered the purple copper coffin with his taboo power, raised it, and smashed it forward. The void in front of him shook violently as the powerful force kept exploding. Then it was forcefully penetrated, creating a hole. It's really effective. Lu Ming's eyes lit up, and he revealed a look of joy. The purple copper coffin was really effective. He didn't even need to open it to directly disperse the force in front of him. If he had known this would happen, he wouldn't have gone through so much trouble and would have used the purple copper coffin to attack. Behind him, Wan Shun's eyes also lit up. Today, there was hope for him to set foot in this place that he had never set foot in. Boom, boom, boom. Lu Ming swung the purple copper coffin and continued to bombard the force in front of him. The force was constantly being torn apart, and the hole was getting bigger and bigger. It was enough for them to pass through. Quick, get in. Lu Ming's present body ut. Go! Myriad God bellowed. With past body, Autumn Moon's figure flashed as she charged towards the hole. Her figure sank into the hole as she broke through the force that was holding her back. In the end, Lu Ming's present body also dashed into the hole. As soon as he rushed in, the force automatically gathered together. This is, when Lu Ming broke in and saw the situation inside, his eyes widened. The eggshell of a primordial god. As far as the eye could see, the ground was littered with the eggshells of primitive gods. The small ones were only the size of a fingernail, while the larger ones were the size of a palm or a plate. Most shocking of all, there were a few pieces of eggshell that were several times bigger than a water tank. There were a total of 3 such eggshells. They were shaped like bowls placed on the ground, but their diameters were more than 3 meters. Within the eggshells, there were strands of light emanating from them. Lu Ming put away the purple copper coffin and walked closer to take a look. He was even more alarmed. The largest pieces of eggshell actually contained some kind of liquid. The liquid was golden in color, as though gold had turned into liquid. It shimmered with an intoxicating luster. At the same time, an extremely rich and ancient aura emanated from the liquid. It was very similar to the blood of a primordial god, but at the same time, it was not. This is the egg white left behind from the eggshell that gave birth to the primordial god. Wan Shun muttered to himself as his eyes widened. Egg white. The others were puzzled. That's right. The primordial gods in the primordial divine lake were all born from eggs. After they left, there was still egg white left behind. This is the egg white left behind after the primordial gods left. It's a peerless treasure. Those who cultivate divine power will reap unimaginable benefits if they absorb this egg white and eggshell. It seems that this area gave birth to 3 primordial gods, Wan Shun exclaimed. There were 3 bow-like eggshells with golden egg white inside. Clearly, there were 3 primordial god eggs. The other small pieces of eggshell were naturally left behind when the primordial gods broke out of their shells. That's great. There are 3 eggshells. 1 for each of you. Lu Ming's present body smiled. He cultivated a forbidden body, so treasures left behind by primordial gods were not very useful to him. Besides, Qiuqiu had no need for these things. Qiuqiu only needed to devour metals or weapons made of metals. Of the 3 eggshells, the past body, Autumn Moon, and Wan Shun would each have 1. Let's keep the smaller eggshells. Don't take these 3 big ones. We will cultivate directly in the eggshells. After all, these primordial god eggs were originally here. It's best if we absorb and refine them here, Wan Shun said. Lu Ming and Autumn Moon naturally had no objections. Then, the group began to put away the surrounding eggshells. The past body, Autumn Moon, and Wan Shun split the eggshells equally. Lu Ming's present body did not take much. He only took some as a token. After all, they were not of much use to him. Then, the past body, Autumn Moon, and Wan Shun each entered an eggshell and sat down cross-legged. Immediately, The golden liquid in the eggshells moved. Like golden ribbons, they wrapped around the three of them. The three of them looked solemn as they cultivated with all their might. It was as though they had turned into three primordial gods. This refinement will probably take a long time. I'd better go somewhere else. Lu Ming's present body pondered. Then he wandered around the area. He discovered that the area within a few hundred miles was enveloped by a powerful force. It was like a layer of restriction. If he wanted to enter this place, he had to break through this layer of power. It's very safe to cultivate here. No one will disturb me. Lu Ming smiled. The primordial god eggshells had been left here for so long without being taken away. This meant that no one had entered this place before. This time, if not for Lu Ming's taboo power and the purple copper coffin, they would not have been able to enter at all. Since others could not enter, it was naturally very safe to cultivate here. No one would disturb them. Therefore, Lu Ming planned to leave first and explore the area. Lu Ming walked to the side and took out the purple copper coffin. He planned to break through this force and leave this place first. However, what surprised him was that this time, he didn't encounter any obstructions. He actually passed through easily. Let's go to the core of the primordial divine lake to take a look. Lu Ming put away the purple copper coffin and walked towards the center of the primordial god lake. Along the way, he collected some natural treasures. Chapter 42:14. The closer they were to the center of the primordial divine lake, the greater the pressure they faced. In the end, even when Lu Ming used the taboo power, it was very difficult for him to move an inch. I wanted to go to the center to see what's inside, but it seems like I won't be able to. Lu Ming shook his head slightly and decided to retreat. However, at this moment, Lu Ming's expression changed. This was because the purple copper coffin in his sea of consciousness had undergone a change. Lu Ming didn't control the purple copper coffin. The purple copper coffin flew out on its own. A force carried Lu Ming forward. Lu Ming felt his body lighten. The external force disappeared without a trace. It didn't affect him at all. The purple copper coffin carried Lu Ming toward the center of the primordial divine lake. It was extremely fast. It was as if the surrounding lake water didn't hinder it at all. In just a few breaths of time, they had flown an unknown distance away, and the purple copper coffin came to a stop. Lu Ming's gaze was first attracted by something in front of him. It was a weapon. It was a war halberd. It was purple in color and seemed to be made of purple copper. Lu Ming suddenly felt that the material of this war halberd was similar to the purple copper coffin. The war halberd was about 3 meters long. It was stuck in the ground. It didn't seem to have any fluctuations or spirituality. It looked like an ordinary weapon. I want to eat, I want to eat. At this moment, Xiuqiu cried out. Its voice was filled with eagerness and anticipation. It was originally a bracelet on Lu Ming's wrist. At this moment, 2 eyes appeared on the bracelet. They stared at the war halberd with burning flames. However, it seemed like it couldn't charge out. There was a terrifying pressure here. It was only fine in Lu Ming's hands. Crack! Before Lu Ming could think further, the purple copper coffin moved again. The sound just now came from the coffin lid. The coffin lid moved away on its own. Lu Ming narrowed his eyes. The purple copper coffin moved on its own again. In his vision, the purple copper coffin rarely moved on its own. During this period of time, it was rare for him to move. Why would it move on its own now? Was it because of that halberd? The purple copper coffin moved away, revealing a small gap. Immediately, a terrifying aura spread out from the gap. Lu Ming felt a terrifying pressure. His entire body tensed up, as if his body was about to be torn apart. It's so scary. What's inside? Lu Ming roared in his heart. Compared to the copper coffin, it seemed that no matter how much progress he made, or how much his cultivation base increased, he was still like an ant. When his cultivation was still weak, he would feel a terrifying pressure when the purple copper coffin was opened. It was as if he was an ant facing a divine dragon. Now, when he had the strength of the top of the 9th godly emperor layer, he still had the same feeling when the coffin was opened. The gap was too big. Fortunately, the lid of the purple copper coffin only opened a little before it stopped moving. Clang. At this time, the halberd moved, releasing a kungchiang sound, and then it began to tremble slightly. Finally, the halberd left the ground and flew towards the purple copper coffin. So it's broken. Lu Ming's heart jumped. After the halberd left the ground, Lu Ming realized that the tip of the halberd was broken, as if it had been cut off by a sharp weapon. The halberd flew towards the purple copper coffin and quickly shrank. It turned into a beam of light and flew into the purple copper coffin through the gap. After the purple copper battle halberd flew in, the purple copper coffin closed with a kacha sound. The crack in the coffin disappeared, and the terrifying pressure disappeared without a trace. What a pity, what a pity! Chiu Chiu sighed. He almost beat his chest and stamped his feet. He was extremely annoyed. According to his instincts, the purple copper halberd was extremely attractive to him. If he had been able to devour it, he would have obtained unimaginable benefits. Unfortunately, the purple copper coffin had absorbed it. What does the purple copper halberd have to do with the purple copper coffin? It's obvious that the purple copper coffin was attracted by it and flew towards it, thought Lu Ming. The purple copper coffin was very mysterious. He had never been able to figure out the origins of the purple copper coffin. Now, he had another question. At this time, the purple copper coffin moved again. A force wrapped around him and brought Lu Ming outside. After a few breaths, Lu Ming returned to where he had been and left the central region of the primordial divine lake. You brought me back. Aren't you going to bring me to other places? Lu Ming muttered. Lu Ming had thought that the purple copper coffin would bring him to other places in the central region of the primordial divine lake. Clearly he had thought too much. The purple copper coffin dashed into Lu Ming's sea of consciousness and floated quietly in it. There were no other strange movements. Lu Ming could only move on his own. However, without the help of the purple copper coffin, he could not get close to the central region of the primordial divine lake. He could only wander around the area and obtain some treasures. A day later, Lu Ming began his return. Finally, he left the primordial divine lake and returned to his residence. During the mid-autumn moon, the myriad god and company were cultivating there. Clearly, it would not end anytime soon. There was no need for him to wait. After returning to his residence, he silently cultivated in search of a way to make a breakthrough. Rumble. Lu Ming had not cultivated for half a day when the entire world suddenly shook violently. What's going on? Lu Ming's expression changed. The tremors were too intense. It was as though the world was being turned upside down. It was definitely not simple. Lu Ming rushed out of the house. Rumble. Another deafening boom sounded. The sky and land shook violently once again. The entire primordial divine lake world was shaking. Bush, bush, bush. Figures soared into the sky from all directions of the primordial divine lake. They stood in the void and looked up into the sky. The sound of tremors came from that void. Rumble. The tremors grew more and more intense, and the sky began to ripple like water. Chi-la. Following that, the sky was torn apart and a very long fissure appeared. Through the fissure, one could see some scenes outside. One could see the starry sky of the universe outside, dotted with stars. In the starry sky of the universe, there were armies standing in the starry sky, exuding a somber aura. Heavenly army! After seeing those figures, Lu Ming was shocked. Those figures were clearly heavenly army. They wore silver or golden armor and were led by divine generals. At a glance, there were at least tens of thousands of them. And this was only the tip of the iceberg. In reality, there were definitely more people. In addition, there were some incomparably huge figures that exuded terrifying fluctuations. They were bombarding the void and tearing it apart. Through the fissure, a terrifying aura emanated. The Lord of Heaven. Lu Ming's pupils constricted. The heavenly palace was here. Chapter 42:15. It was clear that the heavenly palace had arrived. Someone at the level of the Lord of Heaven was tearing the world wall of the primordial divine lake world and was about to charge in. The primordial divine lake world was different from the ordinary minor kiliocosms. The primordial divine lake world had a powerful world wall and was hidden in the dark void, constantly drifting. Unexpectedly, the heavenly palace could find the coordinates of the primordial divine lake world. Swish, 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 figures appeared in the sky of the primordial divine lake world. These figures all exuded an aura as heavy as a mountain. Each one of them was like an abyss, giving off an unfathomable feeling. Divine masters. These were all divine masters. Lu Ming gasped a breath of cold air. That was because he saw at least 50 figures at a glance. These should all be divine master realm existences. Divine emperor realm existences could not possibly have such powerful auras. The primordial divine lake world had more than 50 divine masters. This was absolutely terrifying. No wonder they dared to go against the heavenly palace. Among them, Lu Ming saw the primordial divine spirit that had saved them. There were also a few figures. Lu Ming also sensed a special aura, which was also the aura of the primordial divine spirits. Clearly, the primordial divine lake world had more than one purebred primordial divine spirit. Everyone, return to the cities and activate the arrays of the 4 cities at any time. A primordial divine spirit said, his voice spreading throughout the primordial divine lake world. Yes, sir. Roars rang out one after another. Apart from the divine masters, everyone else flew back to the 4 giant cities. There were 4 giant cities in the 4 directions of the primordial divine lake. These cities were not only used for residential purposes. These 4 cities had arrays that could be combined to activate a powerful array. Lu Ming stood on the mountain peak, unmoving. The god lords hovered in the air, their gazes fixed on the crack. At this moment, the crack in the sky was getting bigger and bigger. Pack, stop them. A primordial divine spirit ordered. At the same time, his body swelled rapidly, turning into a primordial divine spirit. This was his true body. The true bodies of primordial divine spirits were abnormally tall. Boom. This primordial deity had a strange body. It had the head of a tiger and the body of a human. Its body was covered in scales. He held a spear in his hand and thrust it towards the crack. The spear was aimed at the Lord of Heaven who was tearing apart the world barrier. This was the attack of a primordial divine spirit in its prime. Its power was too terrifying. If it was in the universe, it could pierce through a galaxy. Even a heaven monarch would be severely injured if he was hit by such an attack, even if he didn't die. However, the Lord of Heaven's expression did not change. Your opponent is me. A cold voice sounded, and another figure appeared beside the Lord of Heaven. This was another Lord of Heaven, and it held a golden spear as it stabbed out. Clang. The 2 weapons clashed together, emitting a terrifying shockwave. Then, both figures retreated at the same time. What a powerful force! Lu Ming's heart skipped a beat. The primordial divine spirit who had just attacked was definitely powerful enough. It was not weaker than the one who had saved them previously. However, the Lord of Heaven had blocked the attack. This Lord of Heaven was probably stronger than an ordinary Lord of Heaven. Attack! At this moment, the other divine masters of the primordial divine lake all attacked. One divine master had the power to destroy the world. With so many divine masters attacking together, it was earth-shattering. The terrifying shockwaves seemed to be able to pierce through the entire universe. These divine master realm existences bombarded the torn world wall with terrifying attacks, trying to kill the celestial palace powerhouses who were tearing the world wall apart. However, when these attacks approached the torn world barrier, many beams of energy flew in from the outside. Each of these beams of energy was terrifying. They were all from the divine masters, and there were dozens of them. The attacks from both sides collided near the world barrier, and an earth-shattering explosion occurred. A terrifying shockwave swept out in all directions. This shockwave directly hit the torn world barrier. Rumble! There was already a long crack in the world wall, but after being swept up by this force, the crack became even bigger. Oh no! Stop attacking! An expert of the primordial divine lake shouted. It was clear that the heavenly palace had used their strength just now to tear the crack in the world wall even wider. At this moment, the crack in the world barrier was several times bigger than before. They could see the situation outside more clearly. In the starry sky, the heavenly soldiers and divine generals were lined up in rows. There were definitely more than 100,000 of them. In addition, there were many divine masters as well. There were more than 50 of them that could be seen, and some that could not be seen. This time, the heavenly palace had also sent out a powerful force. The 9 Lord of Heaven are attacking together. How rare! A primordial divine spirit said. Primordial divine lake, do you think you can do whatever you want by hiding in the dark void? We have already captured your coordinates. We wanted to wait for a while and let you live a little longer, but you are in a hurry to die, so we have no choice but to fulfill your wish. A cold voice came from outside the world barrier. A tall figure appeared. He was shrouded in light, and his long golden hair danced in the wind. His aura was very intimidating. It was a Lord of Heaven. When the Lord of Heaven finished speaking, more and more figures appeared around him. Among them, 9 figures had the most intimidating auras. In addition, there were more than 60 figures with terrifying auras. Not all of them were from the heavenly humans. Some of them were from the top races in the universe, such as the angels and the demons. These were all divine master-level existences. The Lord of Heaven was only a title of the heavenly palace. Only the heavenly humans could receive this title. However, not all divine masters of the heavenly humans could receive the title of Lord of Heaven. The Lord of Heaven was a top existence even in the divine master realm. This time, the heavenly palace had sent 9 Lord of Heaven, leading a large number of divine masters to attack. Today, the primordial divine lake will disappear from the universe. A Lord of Heaven said domineeringly. How arrogant! Let's see who you can kill. In the primordial divine lake, the primordial divine spirit who had saved Lu Ming last time roared and charged forward. He punched out, and the void shattered. The huge fist smashed toward the divine masters of the heavenly palace. The power of this punch was extremely terrifying, and some of the ordinary godly lords were shocked. Even an ordinary divine master would be instantly killed by such an attack. Swoosh! A Lord of Heaven attacked. His body was covered in dense heavenly power. A battle sword appeared in his hand, and he slashed out, colliding with the fist of the primordial divine spirit. Chapter 42:16. The Lord of Heaven clashed with the primitive divine spirit's attack, creating an earth-shattering explosion. Then, a figure retreated. The Lord of Heaven was the one who retreated. The Lord of Heaven was no match for the primitive divine spirit. The Lord of Heaven is only SOS. Today, I will take the head of the Lord of Heaven as an offering to the primitive divine spirits. The primordial God spirit roared. His tall and sturdy body stepped forward, his aura surging wildly. The Lord of Heaven, who had just been pushed back, was stunned. Hong, let me be your opponent. A cold voice said. Then, a figure appeared in the air. This was also a heavenly monarch. However, this heavenly monarch was a woman. She had long golden hair, fair skin, and peerless beauty. This was a female Lord of Heaven. Damning Lord of Heaven, you came at the right time. Let me see if you have improved over the years. The primitive divine spirit shouted. The primitive divine spirit who had saved Lu Ming and the others was called Hong. Most of the primitive divine spirits' names were one word. Hong's body was indomitable and in human form. His entire body was covered in scales. When he punched out, heaven and earth would explode. The power was terrifying to the extreme. Fortunately, this was the world of the primordial divine lake. It was formed at the beginning of the world and was extremely stable, just like the Dragon Clan's mother planet. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been able to withstand a battle between divine masters, just like the universe. In front of Hong, damning Lord of Heaven was as small as a speck of dust. However, no one dared to underestimate her. This was because damning Lord of Heaven was one of the most powerful lords of heaven in the heavenly palace. Damning Lord of Heaven stood there calmly. She reached out her finger and pointed it casually. A blast of energy shot out and collided with Hong's fist. There was no sound of collision, but Hong's face changed drastically. His body trembled, and he was forced to retreat. A bloody hole had already appeared on his fist, and blood was flowing out. Lu Ming could not help but swallow his saliva. This was the blood of a primordial god. It was such a waste for it to slip away like that. Hong, we haven't seen each other for many years. Your strength is still disappointing. Big Dream, Lord of Heaven, said calmly. Taking a step forward, a formless energy spread out towards Hong. Dream Force. Not good. Hong's face changed drastically. The primordial divine power in his body burst out crazily as he punched out with both his fists. Such an attack was absolutely terrifying. If it was in the universe, a galaxy would be destroyed by such an attack. However, such an attack could not stop the power that burst forth from the Lord of Heaven. However, he was only able to block a portion of it. There was still a portion that he was unable to block, and it continued to envelop Hong. The moment he was enveloped by this power, Hong's movements suddenly slowed down. He became a little dazed and his eyelids drooped as if he was about to fall asleep. Swoosh! Big Dream, Lord of Heaven moved. He quickly approached Hong and pointed out another finger. Heavenly punishment. Big Dream, Lord of Heaven, said coldly in the air. A finger force pierced through Hong's forehead at an astonishing speed. At the critical moment, Hong roared to wake himself up. The primordial divine spirit burst out crazily, enveloping him. At the same time, he tilted his head back. Blood splattered everywhere. Hong did not manage to dodge the attack completely and was hit. A bloody hole appeared on his forehead. However, he managed to avoid being hit in his vital parts, so he was not seriously injured. However, in his heart, he was secretly afraid. That attack just now was really dangerous. You have improved since you were able to dodge my attack. However, that's all. Big Dream, Lord of Heaven's cold voice resounded. If it wasn't for your dream force, I would not be afraid of you. If you have the ability, let's fight face to face, Hong roared. Ridiculous, Big Dream, Lord of Heaven, said coldly. She continued to use her dream force to attack. The scariest thing about the Great Dream Heavenly Lord was her great dream power. It was extremely terrifying. Her most terrifying record was when she made a move that made all the living beings in the entire galaxy fall asleep in an instant. It was truly terrifying to the extreme. She was known as one of the strongest Lord of Heaven because of this. How could she give up her strongest attack? Hong retreated again. However, the dream force was omnipresent and fast. No matter how Hong tried to dodge, he was still hit. He became a little dazed again and his movements slowed down. Heavenly punishment, kill. Big Dream, Lord of Heaven, said coldly. This time, a battle sword appeared in her hand. She stabbed the sword towards Hong's forehead. The power was stronger and faster than before. This time, Hong was unable to dodge it. Hong and Big Dream, Lord of Heaven, exchanged a few moves. It seemed to have taken a long time, but in fact, it only happened in an instant. It was at this moment that another primitive god spirit arrived. This primordial immortal spirit was like a male lion. With a loud roar, the heavens and earth shook. Hong, who was about to fall asleep, was suddenly awakened. He fought back with all his might and blocked Dream Lord's attack. Lion, are you here to interfere? Then I'll kill you too. Big Dream, Lord of Heaven, said. Although she was a woman, she was domineering and charming. She continued to use her dream force. However, the primitive divine spirit, lion, roared, shaking heaven and earth. It kept Hong and himself awake. He grabbed at Big Dream, Lord of Heaven, with his huge claws. When he clashed with Big Dream, the void shattered and turned into chaos. At the same time, Hong attacked again. You want to win with numbers? Attack together. Another Lord of Heaven roared. He wanted to help Big Dream, Lord of Heaven. You don't need to interfere. Go deal with the others. Leave these two to me. Big Dream, Lord of Heaven, said coldly. The other Lord of Heaven and Divine Lords could only stop and attack the other Divine Lords of the Primordial Divine Lake. Kill! The other Divine Lords of the Primordial Divine Lake were fearless. Both sides fought. With so many Divine Masters fighting at the same time, it was too terrifying. The space was smashed into pieces. They directly entered the dark void and fought crazily in the dark void that was eternally withered. In the blink of an eye, The battle was over. The sky above the primordial divine lake world suddenly quieted down. Celestial soldiers and divine generals, attack and destroy the primordial divine lake world. Kill all the living beings inside. A cold voice sounded outside the world wall. Kill! Battle cries shook the sky. The army of celestial soldiers and divine generals approached the torn world wall. At a glance, they could not see the end. There were more celestial soldiers and divine generals than expected. There were at least 200,000 of them. Rise. With another roar, the celestial soldiers and divine generals separated into square formations and formed array formations. Obviously, these celestial soldiers and divine generals came prepared. They could set up array formations with each other. Dazzling lights spread out and gathered in the sky. Then, several terrifying divine lights blasted toward the primordial divine lake world. Chapter 42:17. The heavenly soldiers and divine generals set up a grand formation. Terrifying divine light shot toward the primordial divine lake world. Wherever it passed, everything would be destroyed. Grand formation rise. Grand formation rise. Shouts came from the 4 cities in the primordial divine lake world. Following that, the 4 huge cities all emitted dazzling multicolored light. Above the 4 cities, 4 different weapons condensed. There were swords, sabers, spears, and spears. In the sky above the huge city where Lu Ming was, a long spear condensed. The spear was huge. It crossed the sky above the city and cast a huge shadow. It was even bigger than the city. Clang. The spear vibrated and flew out as if it was controlled by a peerless expert. It thrust out many spear shadows and collided with the divine light. The weapons above the other 3 cities did the same. The weapons formed by the battle formations attacked the divine light. Boom, boom, boom. Explosions occurred above the primordial divine lake world. Violent energy waves swept in all directions. The attacks of the heavenly soldiers and divine generals were blocked. Continue. The heavenly soldiers and divine generals continued to activate the grand formation and attack. However, the attacks of the heavenly soldiers and divine generals were all blocked by the 4 cities. They did not suffer any losses. After all, the primordial divine lake world had survived from the age of incipient God. After many years of accumulation and development, its strength was very shocking. Otherwise, it would not have dared to fight against the heavenly palace. The heavenly palace's forces were not enough to take it down. The 2 sides were in a stalemate for a while. The heavenly palace did not make much progress. You guys continue to attack. We will support you. At this time, a few more figures appeared beside the torn world barrier. There were 3 of them. One of them was a heavenly human. As for the other 2, one was obviously an angel. The other had a strong blood chi. He should be from the blood race. Yale, the Lord of Heaven. Lu Ming's expression changed when he saw the heavenly human. This heavenly human was an old acquaintance. He was the Lord of Heaven of the heavenly palace who had attacked the Dragon Clan's mother planet. The angel race and blood clan experts beside him were clearly 2 divine masters as well. Be careful, it's the Lord of Heaven from the heavenly palace. Lu Ming immediately roared. His voice spread far and wide, reminding the people of primordial divine lake. When the people of the primordial divine lake heard this, they were also greatly shocked. In the heavenly palace, another Lord of Heaven appeared. It seemed that the number of Lord of Heaven that came from the heavenly palace was not 9, but 10. The Lord God of Heaven and the divine lords from before had already been blocked by the divine lord experts of the primordial divine lake. The battle had gone into the dark void. There were no longer any divine masters in the primordial divine lake. The Lord of Heaven of the heavenly palace has appeared. Attention, combine the 4 formations. A loud roar echoed in all directions. Buzz. The multicolored light in the 4 giant cities became even more dazzling. Lu Ming felt that the mountain peak beneath his feet was trembling slightly. Waves of primordial and ancient aura emanated from the mountain peak. It was as if a primordial divine spirit was about to awaken within the mountain peak. On the ground, A layer of ancient divine power flowed and then shot up into the sky. Lu Ming stood on the mountain peak and looked into the distance. He realized that the 4 giant cities seemed to have formed a resonance. A light shield formed and enveloped the 4 giant cities and the primordial divine lake. In the blink of an eye, the Yale Lord of Heaven and the 2 divine lords had already made their move. The Yale Lord of Heaven took out a battle sword and slashed with all his might. A terrifying sword light slashed toward one of the giant cities. The sword light was so huge that it seemed as if it was going to cut the city in half. At the same time, the divine lords of the angel race and the blood kindred also made their moves. They attacked with 2 terrifying moves. The divine lords of the angel race and the blood kindred were also very powerful. They were definitely not ordinary divine lords. Even if they were not as strong as the Lord of Heaven, they were not much weaker. Kill! The heavenly soldiers and divine generals also made their moves. They activated the battle formation and blasted out terrifying divine light. Clang, 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 clang. The sound of weapons clashing resounded through the sky. The 4 weapons above the 4 giant cities shot up into the sky and collided with the attacks that were descending. However, this time, the 4 weapons could not block the attacks from the sky. After all, there were 3 more divine lords attacking this time. The 4 weapons vibrated violently and were sent flying back. Cracks appeared on them. In the 4 giant cities, the experts of the primordial divine lake frantically activated the array to repair the 4 weapons. However, the attacks of the Yale Lord of Heaven and the others arrived once again. This time, the 4 weapons could no longer withstand the attacks and were blasted apart. The remaining attacks landed on the light shield formed by the 4 cities. There was a loud explosion, but they were still blocked. Let's see how long this array can block me. The Yale Lord of Heaven stepped into the primordial divine lake world overbearingly and stood in the sky. The other 2 divine lords also stepped forward and stood on either side of the Yale Lord of Heaven. Kill! Kill, kill. The heavenly soldiers and divine generals were also closing in on the city. Attack with all your might. Break their array and destroy the primordial divine lake. Their divine lords will also die. They are no match for us, the Yale Lord of Heaven ordered. Then he made his move. A terrifying aura exploded and the sky shook violently. An unimaginably powerful pressure pressed down on the city. Fortunately, the 4 cities were protected by the array. Otherwise, the Yale Lord of Heaven and the others would not need to attack. The pressure alone would be enough to crush everyone to death. Even a peak divine emperor would not be able to withstand such an aura and pressure. Even so, Lu Ming still felt a heavy pressure. It was as if a huge rock was pressing down on his heart, making it difficult for him to breathe. Dazzling sword light slashed down on the 4 cities. Then, bright holy light accompanied by blood-red light fell. Every attack could destroy the heavens and earth. In addition, there was also the divine light formed by the heavenly soldiers and divine generals. Boom, boom, boom. These attacks bombarded the light shield formed by the array, causing the light shield to shake violently. The entire ground rumbled loudly. Lu Ming felt that the mountain under his feet was shaking violently. Fortunately, he managed to block it in the end. However, the attacks of the Yale Lord of Heaven and the others did not stop. They continued to fall. The light shield shook violently and became more and more violent. It could be seen that the light barrier was slowly dimming under the constant attacks. If this continued, the light shield would be broken sooner or later. When that time came, no one would be able to survive against the Lord of Heaven. Lu Ming's face was grave. The primordial divine lake should have a backup plan. Lu Ming muttered. He did not believe that this was all the primordial divine lake had. How could they fight against the heavenly palace with this? They should at least have a trump card. As time passed, the light shield dimmed more and more. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.